I was so excited to become a published author with my very first coloring book, although it didn't quite turn out the way I had expected. And now I've kind of entered a new realm of self-publishing, almost. These are my 8 coloring books behind me, and I have done them start to finish completely on my own. And I was, like I said, so excited to be a published author that I didn't realize that it was going to be so much more gratifying to actually kind of self-published, do it on my own. When I say self-published, I don't actually mean that they have an ISBN number like my first coloring book did. As far as I understand, basically having an ISBN number is what makes something like published traditionally, and usually to get one you go through a publisher. I know there's ways to self-publish, especially on like Amazon or through platforms like that. I don't do that for my coloring books because it's kind of not necessary. I think publishers traditionally are really, for books, coloring books, whatever, are basically distributors largely. Like they're also the manufacturing, like they make the idea, the words, the pages, they make them into the physical product, and then they have the connections that allow them to distribute the book to bookstores or whoever is going to finally be the sellers to consumers. But for me, I already have my followers and my business, and all of that is already set up. So I have no problem making the product and actually getting it to customers. So I don't really need a publisher. When you actually do publishing, or when you are published through a publisher, they obviously do all of that for you, and you get a royalty, which means you get like a percentage of each sale. That is basically payment for the intellectual property, so the words of the novel or the pages of the coloring book in my instance. So it's pretty minimal compared to the overall sale price of the product, because obviously the publisher needs to pay for the product itself and then for its operations that allow it to distribute the product. Because my business already does all of that as far as product development and distribution and advertising and all of that, I felt like the royalty wasn't enough, basically. I was doing a lot of legwork promoting my first coloring book, but still only getting the royalty as if I was simply providing the IP. And I say simply almost a little sarcastically because that feels like it's the whole ball game sometimes. Like obviously nobody's gonna buy something that isn't well thought out and curated and have a good idea behind it. But as I've learned more and more about running my own business and business in general, I've realized that like the operations, the product itself, the advertising is really kind of the most expensive and important part. Like the logistics really are what make a business. Even if you have the best idea in the world, it may not amount to anything if you don't have like the right business model behind it. So since I already had that set up for my business, I was able to kind of like cut out the publisher. Obviously, the publisher is who allowed me access to big box stores, Hobby Lobby, Joann, RIP, Michael's, and even some other big ones like Anthropologie's online and stuff like that. But that's okay because as I mentioned in the previous video, I said the total amount of money that I made from that coloring book, and it was kind of minimal. And so I've already made a lot more in revenue, a lot more in revenue from my self-published or just kind of independently done coloring books. And so I'm very happy that I am able to kind of be compensated for everything that goes into developing the coloring book, which I've been doing, but also I have a lot more control. So the publisher obviously dictates kind of like what the final product looks like, and they present their ideas and then you kind of go back and forth. But when I'm doing everything myself, from the development all the way to the marketing and advertising and obviously creating the whole product in between, all of that happens in my own head. So I don't need to email back and forth. I don't really need to meet any deadlines unless I set it for myself. I don't have to cut pages out that I like. I don't have to listen to the publisher's theme ideas. Everything I can just do myself. Obviously, like I had no problem working with my publisher. They were super nice, but being able to just like self-dictate every aspect of the book is ideal for me. I love that. I feel like I have a really good sense of what my customers want. It is helpful to get a second opinion on things, but thankfully I can ask my followers or I can ask my coworkers what they think. So, or just even my friends. So I think I still have a good idea of like what themes and what topics and what visuals I want in all of my books, and I'm so happy with how they've turned out. I also am able to do my own like predetermined page count, my own product specs, including the paperweight. So because my business, like I said, was already set up for all the logistics that go into making a product and selling it, it is no problem for me to do that with my coloring books, and I'm really happy that I'm able to kind of do that all under one roof instead of having like another company and another set of opinions and another set of deadlines and requirements involved. So when I say self-published, I don't actually mean published. It's just kind of like an easy shorthand for like describing that I do everything myself versus actually going through a publisher. I don't have an ISBN. I don't think I need it for my coloring books. And it was really exciting that I could say I was a published author working with a publisher, but ultimately what I learned is that what I'm doing now I think is a lot better for me and actually kind of a lot more impressive. It is nice to have the validation that like a publisher actually wants to work with you. However, that's I think a price I'm willing to pay, not having that in exchange for having total control and being able to be kind of fully compensated for all the work that goes into these books, because each one is an enormous lift, takes probably about 200 hours a piece. And I feel like I put my whole heart and soul into it. So kind of just licensing off that intellectual property and relinquishing control is not like the best feeling. Not a huge deal, but I love being able to be in full control of my own work. It is kind of similar. I mean, it is basically almost the same thing as Taylor Swift not owning her masters. Someone else owned it. They had control over it. My first book, I don't have control over it until the contract is up. The contract ends when they decide to not keep printing the book. I have no control over that. I couldn't just take the pieces of art in that book and reprint them. Obviously, I can still draw any new product that I want, any new art that I want, and it's mine, but that already done work belongs to them and there's nothing I can really do about that. So obviously that's just how contracts work sometimes, and I have enough familiarity with contracts as a law school grad to like understand that people agree to that kind of contract all the time, because obviously like you're getting something out of it, which would be like the royalty or, you know, what the publisher has to offer. It's just you don't really know what that's going to look like until you've already done it. So having worked with the publisher, who were great, but like my end of the deal just wasn't, like it just didn't make business sense. And it's kind of a bummer knowing that my work is out there and it's not mine. It's not as serious of a situation as Taylor Swift's reclaiming of her own songs, but I do feel like I have a little bit of insight into how she feels owning her own artwork versus having someone else own it. And that's why I think similar reasons why I really love that I can self-publish or just kind of independently create all of my coloring books, and I can keep making more and more whenever I want. So I actually was able to release 5 so far, hopefully 6 this year. That definitely is not the pace that I would have done the coloring books at with a publisher, maybe 1 a year if I was lucky. And I'm really happy that I can just kind of throw all my ideas and creative energy out there. I actually have 2 coloring books that have come out in the past couple of weeks. The first one is Wallflowers and the second one is Sweet and Spooky, and I'm super excited about them. Wallflowers is vintage wallpaper inspired and Sweet and Spooky is Halloween inspired. I did mean to do a Christmassy, wintry themed coloring book. It didn't happen, but hopefully I'll have one more coloring book to share with everybody in a couple of months this year, and then next year stay tuned for another seasonal, wintry, hopefully Christmassy coloring book then. Every release this year has been like even more successful than the last, so that's been super fun and gratifying, and it has just really confirmed for me the like desire and kind of the business decision I made to do these coloring books myself. They've just been very successful and it makes me feel like I made the right choice. So very happy with how that all turned out. The world is basically your oyster when you're doing the product yourself. You can choose everything about the book. Like, it doesn't need to be paper sized. My books are 8.5 by 10 instead of 8.5 by 11. So you can do whatever. You can make mini coloring books, you can make giant coloring books, you could make a 400-page coloring book, you can make a 10-page coloring book, you can make it with like 200-pound paper, which would be like, you know, credit card kind of thickness, or you could make it with tissue paper. So you could really do whatever. What I wanted ultimately was just to kind of match my first coloring book, so if people had it, it would line up on their shelf nicely. So I kind of went with basically similar specs to my first coloring book that I did do with the publisher. I felt fine with those specs. I went with kind of like a slightly thicker paper and kind of made a few changes, but because I had already released that product, even though I didn't necessarily choose all those things, I still went with it. I just found a manufacturer that I knew I could work with, and they made it happen. So it was a very simple process because I already had a lot of the decisions made, and I'm very used to working with manufacturers, so it was pretty easy. But if you do it yourself, you can make any decision that you want. Having like a reference of some kind is usually helpful, I feel like. And I had the reference in my first coloring book, so that was helpful. If you guys have any other questions about licensing, royalties, publishing, or self-publishing, or kind of independently creating products, please let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to make future videos about this. Also, if you haven't seen like the whole backstory of my first coloring book and what it was like working with a publisher and kind of why it wasn't my favorite, I do have that whole part 1 to this video, so go check that out. Any questions you have, put them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also join our Elise Brand Design Insiders Facebook group, which you'll find a link to as well if you want sneak peeks and early access to new products and sales and all that. And thank you so much for watching till the end.